And a happy Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Some changes coming to your short-term forecast as we round out the work week. And maybe it's the last full work week or full school week that you have before we get into Christmas, of course, this time next week. So we'll talk about what we're expecting as we go into your well-extended forecast. But first things first, let's cover the short term. Today going to be partly cloudy to mostly cloudy at times, but it is going to be dry. We will see the cloud cover get denser and denser before some widespread rain is in store throughout tomorrow afternoon. And all in all, it's just really a warmer stretch of weather that we do have for the foreseeable future. We'll have our fair share of days that maybe bump down below average, maybe right at average, but most of the days in your near future are trending to be above average for this time of year. So here's a look around the quad, which has been a bit of an interesting story so far throughout this Wednesday. As you can see in Warner Robins, the Georgia National Fairgrounds, and downtown Macon, but along with that, now downtown Dublin, sunshine is peeking through the scatter clouds that you do see in the sky, but still plenty of glimpses of that blue sky. In Dublin, just a second ago, was cloudy, but now we are seeing some peaks of sunshine. That will be the case all throughout today, and these peaks of sunshine are going to be crucial because they will allow us to creep up into our high temperature today that is looking to be above average. But let's go ahead and flash it back to this morning because it was once again a story of an immaculate sunrise all across the quad view this morning, specifically Warner Robins and Perry. Not only do you just see this gorgeous display of colors, some oranges, pinks, some reds, but take a look at that reflection of the colors in these ponds right here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds and right here at CGTC's Warner Robins campus off Cohen Walker Drive. The sunrise in Dublin, mighty spectacular, and along with that, downtown Macon here in the bottom left, but just not emphasizing the colors as much as the sunrises in Houston County this morning. But nonetheless, it's not a competition. As long as we can get a great image like this to walk out the door to, I'm sure it instantly puts a smile on your face. But for that matter of a fact, there was something else that probably put a smile on your face this morning. I, for one, definitely didn't feel the difference, but our temperatures, they did start out a little bit warmer than what we've had over the last couple of days. So here's a look at your current temperature map, which gives me the idea that I think we are probably going to exceed my high temperature for today. Not necessarily a bad thing whatsoever, but you can see numbers scattered about the low 50s, 50 degrees in Eatonton and Milledgeville, 51 in Gordon, and then taking it down to our fair share of mid 50s, 54 and 55 across areas like Wrightsville, Sandersville, Dublin, and over to Swainsboro. 57 I thought was going to be the warmest temperature, but that actually goes to Butler over there in Taylor County. But on the other end of the range, we do see a 48 popping up in Hancock County. So still a bit reluctant to get rid of some of that cloud cover and some of the colder temperatures up there in Sparta here at the 11 a.m. hour. Compared to our neighbors, it does look like we are hovering with a very similar forecast down here in the southeast United States. 46 in Charlotte, obviously a good deal colder than what we're dealing with right now. 48 up in Lexington, 50 in Nashville, 55 in Montgomery, 61 already in Charleston. And then as you go down to the south and the southeast, a 72 in Orlando. So it looks like the impacts of the passing cold front that we did see as of early on Sunday afternoon have since gone away. We've had our fair share of very cold temperatures all across the eastern United States. Now starting to see some of that green, maybe even some yellow build back into the forecast across areas that are closer to the Gulf Coast. But up to the north and the northwest of us, we can spot plenty of temperatures that are still well below average. 41 in Kansas City, 41 in Indianapolis, 42 in Wichita. And once again, just like yesterday, Denver hovering at the 52-degree mark, so kind of rivaling some temperatures that we see in Texas. It's warmer in Denver than it is Little Rock, Arkansas. Warmer in Denver also than Nashville, Lexington, Indy, and up into St. Louis. Now let's take a look at your winds and your wind gusts. We haven't had much of a breeze since we got through Monday. That breeze steadily subsided throughout the day. So anywhere from about maybe some calm winds to up to a 3 to maybe 5 or 6 mile per hour breeze. And we're kind of out of the temperature range to where your feels like temperatures are going to be cooler than say what your actual temperatures are sitting at. You can see that a lot of these values are reciprocating what we do see on the actual temperature map, but that green color is just a little bit more profound. Maybe some areas have a bit of difference, although I do believe that most everyone is feeling like somewhere in the 50s as we creep closer and closer to midday. So let's go back to yesterday. 18 degrees for a morning low temperature recorded. That was 20 degrees below your average low of 38. And in fact, we did make a run at the record. We flirted with that 17-degree mark set back in 1901, so over 100 years ago that our first record low was set for yesterday all time. We were 1 degree above that, giving you an idea that we haven't seen as cold of temperatures as we saw yesterday morning in quite some time. But 60 degrees, that was your high temperature. We saw a temperature increase of 42 degrees. Remember, I had high temperature forecasted somewhere around 57, and I said I could see a select few areas that maybe hover in the upper 50s and maybe get that 40-degree temperature increase. However, we saw a little bit more than that, but 60 degrees still fell 1 degree shy of our average high of 61. 82 was the record for yesterday, set back in 1971. 80 degrees, I sure hope we don't see that in the forecast. It is December after all, so we would like some very appropriate feeling weather, and that's what looks to be in store, but maybe a little bit more warmer than you're liking as we go into your extended forecast. And now your departure of rain. Without any rain yesterday, it is hovering below an inch below where we should be. So negative 1.12 inches below where we should be at this point in 2025. And we'll briefly mention sunrise at 7:30, sunset at 5:31. So sunrise continues to get a little bit later, maybe every couple of days or so, and we will continue to see that sunrise get later and later, and the sunset going to get later and later, but the sunrise also going to continue to get later until we get sometime around January 1st. Then I do anticipate that to be the beginning of a stretch where we do have our latest sunrise, just flip-flopping my words in my head right there. So not as cold of a start to today. It was still a pretty cold start, but I think now we finally have some weather that you can shed those layers that you walked out the door with. And some peaks of sun. Right now, it's not even looking like some. It's looking like a predominantly sunny forecast, but I still elected to keep that partly cloudy icon because I knew most of you are going to have a scenario like we currently see on the Skycam. You are going to have some cloud cover present across some areas. However, it is going to be a story of probably some mostly sunny to maybe some partly cloudy skies. Not really looking like a mostly cloudy atmosphere will be in store. But I went with a high temperature of 63 degrees. We are about 6 degrees off that number so far in the Macon area. But the most important messaging with today is not whether or not we get that high temperature right. It is that the fact we are finally climbing back above average, and this will make the third day in the month of December that we are going to have a red box on the calendar graphic. So yesterday, yes, I know it did feel pretty nice in the afternoon. We were really close to average, but we were still 1 degree shy. So that marks the 12th day so far this month that we have seen a blue box below average high temperatures. 2 days still stand at average exactly, back last Wednesday and this past Sunday. And then last Friday and Saturday are only 2 red boxes that we've received for the month of December. I imagine we'll have our fair share of those over the course of the next week, and we'll probably get that tally in the above average category, maybe up to around 7, maybe even 8 days by the time we get to the end of this warm stretch. But right now, I'm not really seeing an end in sight for the warm stretch, so it may be getting closer to New Year's before we finally dip the numbers back below average. No signs of a big frontal boundary that's going to usher in some Arctic air on the horizon. So hour by hour, the warm-up is expected to continue into the upper 50s as we hit noon, and then the warm-up is expected to slow from the past couple of hours as we head into the afternoon, hovering right at 62 degrees through most of that warmest portion of the day. And then as you go into the evening hours, you will see temperatures dip down into the upper 50s, eventually into the lower 50s, probably if you're wrapping up dinner, say around 7 or 8 p.m. And then as we continue to progress overnight, I don't expect too much of a temperature drop because we are going to get an increase in the cloud coverage, and it's actually going to be denser in nature the farther and farther into the nighttime hours that we go. So here's a look at your satellite and radar picture. Gaps in the cloud cover, a good mix of high-level clouds, some low-level clouds. Remember that temperature up in Sparta that we were just talking about? The only area hovering in the upper 40s, well, that's mainly because they're still holding on to some dense cloud cover. As this cloud cover continues to move from west to east, we'll get some gaps in it, and we will allow for a warm-up, say, into the lower 50s up there in Hancock County. That's the story all across the southeast really right now. We do have a good gap in the cloud coverage from Alabama all the way over into western Georgia, down in southern Alabama, the western panhandle of Florida. But all in all, it's just a pretty messy image on your satellite and radar picture all across the southeast. It will be a story of on and off cloud cover, but like I said, I do anticipate maybe a warm up a little bit more than what we had forecasted because we're really not seeing too much in the way of cloud cover. This is mainly of the high level cloud cover variety as we go into the afternoon. So 3 p.m. we progress into the nighttime hours just past sunset, and still a story of on and off clouds. But as we go overnight into tomorrow morning, like I mentioned, that cloud cover will get a bit denser in nature, a bit more widespread, not as many gaps in it. That's going to result in some warmer morning low temperature values as you head out the door tomorrow. And along with that, the denser the cloud cover gets, that's when we're going to start to welcome in some rain chances as early as the early morning hours tomorrow. So very likely we'll be talking about a few sprinkle showers or maybe a couple of pockets of some light and steady rain as you are going out and about, maybe around 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. But I don't expect the bulk of the rain to arrive until we get a little bit later in the day. You see this widespread rain over to the west of us around 8 a.m. It does look like we've seen pretty good model agreement between the last couple model runs of Future View. That widespread rain does look to be present farther to the west of us, a little bit earlier than say here in central Georgia, but still be prepared if you do run out the door and there is a light drizzle, maybe even a bit of a steady shower. I think it's going to be better to maybe walk out the door with the rain gear that you do have present tomorrow. And just because it's not raining doesn't mean that you don't need that rain gear all throughout your Thursday, because take a look at what happens as we go forward in time. 11 a.m. that widespread rain finally surging up into central Georgia, and it continues to engulf almost all of us with some form of rain as we head into those hours just past lunchtime. This is 2 p.m. Many school districts may be having that half day of school tomorrow, or maybe you do have the full work day, not getting off until 5 p.m. Well, this is the reason why I think that you're going to want to bring the rain gear with you on that morning commute, because the rain is going to be widespread in the afternoon. Some pockets of steadier and some heavier rain in those yellow and orange colors are going to be present in some areas, but not all across central Georgia. Then we go into evening commute time. Rain still very widespread, but we are beginning to see the signs of that rain pushing from west to east out of the picture. And I do believe by about 8 p.m. that rain, at least the bulk of this moisture and your rain chances on Thursday, does move out over towards the east because of what's coming from the west. However, around 8 p.m., just past dinner time ends tomorrow, we are expecting at least a bit of a break in the dreary weather. We will have some clearing in the clouds, although it's going to be nighttime already at 8 p.m. tomorrow, so you probably won't get a glimpse of this clearing in the clouds. And then we will start to see a frontal boundary move in from west to east, and that frontal boundary is a big reason why all of that moisture moves off to the east, and we will see a bit of a line of broken showers ahead of this frontal boundary itself. But not only that, we are going to receive an uptick in the winds, still coming out of that southerly direction as we go overnight into the early morning hours on Friday. This is more so overnight, so just past midnight. It does look like this last reinforcing bit of rain does push into the picture. It continues to fizzle out, not hold its steam together too well as we go into these early morning hours on Friday. And by about the time we get to 6 a.m., that rain is already out of the picture. So you may not have to worry about this rain whatsoever as you go into your morning commute time on Friday morning. And eventually, just behind the rain showers that are going to be ahead of this front, will be a bit of residual cloud cover, but we will see some pretty quick clearing. I think for the majority of you, you're going to walk out to a nice and sunny atmosphere that will be present all throughout Friday, but still pay attention to these wind arrows. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the winds and wind gust graphic, but it does look like Friday afternoon, while it is clear, it is going to be a little bit cooler, and when you pair it up with these winds, maybe a tad bit on the chillier side compared to say what this afternoon feels like and what tomorrow afternoon feels like. Don't worry, just as quick as we cool down, we do warm back up as we head throughout the rest of the weekend, and we'll play Future View all the way out to Saturday at 4 a.m. where there's still not a single cloud in the sky. Here's a look at your Future View rainfall graphic. How much rain are we expecting? Because we could use a couple of inches given how dry that we have been as of lately. Well, I think with both rounds of rain, what's in store for Thursday afternoon into the evening, and that frontal boundary, that thin line of broken showers moving through, most areas should only total out with maybe about a couple tenths of an inch of rain, so probably below the half-inch mark, but you will have your fair share of areas that pop up some isolated amounts closer to a half-inch of rain, closer to 3/4 of an inch of rain, or even some totals that could get up to around 1 inch in nature. Cordele has remained pretty consistent at that value with the last couple of model runs, so I do have a bit more confidence in the farther south that you live, you are going to receive a little bit more rainfall than, say, areas farther to the north in central Georgia. We'll continue to pick apart how much rain exactly we got as we go into this extended forecast on Friday. However, as of right now, it is looking like a very dreary day on Thursday, not going to send us a substantial amount of rain. I don't expect this to improve our drought conditions that we have, but it will at least prevent them from worsening as we have the update with next week's drought monitor. This week's drought monitor could see a little bit of worsening with some of the conditions, but that is going to get released as of tomorrow morning in between the 8 and 9 a.m. hours. So we'll see where we do stand as of that during your extended forecast tomorrow. Here's a look at the wind gusts. Not too much of a breeze today, maybe some isolated pockets that get a gust up to 10 miles per hour, but we do see some pockets where there are some gusty winds as we go into Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon, especially in those yellow shades. That's where you have the potential for some wind gusts up to, say, 20, maybe even 22 miles per hour like Cordele. But then the widespread gusty winds are actually going to be present Thursday night, overnight into Friday, and early in Friday morning. So early Friday morning, we are going to have our fair share of some gusty winds, maybe even higher than 30 miles per hour within this red band that moves through. After that passes through, we will still hold on to a bit of a breeze on the backside of this. Definitely not as gusty of winds as they're seeing up here into South Carolina and into North Carolina. There's some shades of pink. There's even some shades of purple, which are going to indicate some very, very gusty winds, maybe even upwards to 40 or 50 miles per hour. There might even be a bit of a severe weather risk within those areas, but not necessarily back home. I do expect windy conditions to welcome you out the door on Friday morning, and those are going to stick around into the afternoon and evening hours. But then as we go into Friday night, I do expect the winds to finally subside just a little. And then that takes us into Saturday, which is looking like probably the best day that we do have all weekend for some outdoor plans in terms of dodging the rain chances. But Friday afternoon into the evening is also looking like a very good time to get some of those outdoor plans in as well. So over the next 3 days, what can you expect temperature-wise and rain chance-wise? Well, partly cloudy, maybe even getting into mostly sunny territory now that we're looking at what the cloud cover is doing in real time. But 63 is my high temperature. I wouldn't be surprised if, say, we flirt with the high temperature for tomorrow as we go into this afternoon. But the big difference in between today and tomorrow is obviously the rain chance, number one. I mean, 90% chance of rain compared to 0 that we do have throughout today. But pay attention to that morning low. We always get caught up in these afternoon high temperatures, but you definitely need to pay close attention to the numbers as you head out the door each and every day. 44 degrees for a morning low compared to 30 degrees, which we saw this morning, and we were mainly scattered about the mid to the upper 30s for most of the morning, but that was because the cloud cover made its entrance sometime around 3 to 4, maybe even getting into 5 a.m. So the denser that cloud cover gets overnight is going to result in some warmer numbers to walk out the door to. Finally, above average for a change. So it is going to feel like a much more pleasant environment to walk outside to, but definitely still on the chilly end. Something you'll need some light layering for, but not the heavy winter layers that you needed, say, on Monday morning, on Tuesday morning, and maybe even a little bit this morning. I didn't have as many layers on this morning, so I think that's why this morning felt a little bit colder than the last two, in my personal opinion. But 65 degrees for a high temperature, even despite the cloud cover, and I think that's mainly attributed to the uptick in moisture that we will get associated with the rain chances. And I do have high confidence in everyone in central Georgia receiving something in the way of rainfall. I've had 90% for this chance of rain. Just to cover the bases, there may be a few areas that get left out, but over the last 24 hours, I do have pretty good confidence in everyone receiving some rain. So don't be surprised if that's a 100% chance of rain this time tomorrow when we're talking about the extended forecast. Then 43, so a very similar morning low temperature to welcome you out the door on Friday. But remember, the winds are going to build into the forecast. So 43 is very likely to feel a little bit colder in some spots as you walk outside on Friday. And then we'll start to see some slightly cooler air ushered in behind the frontal boundary that leads to a couple of shower chances during the early morning time frame. That's why I've depicted the early morning below that rain chance because that's the only time period on Friday that you will have a rain chance. The rest of the day on Friday looking like smooth sailing, just going to be a breezy afternoon, but it is going to be mostly sunny to completely sunny in your forecast, but 57 for a high temperature. So a bit of a bump down in the high temperature department, maybe adding one more day that is forecasted to be below average as we go into the end of the work week and head into the weekend, but we will be very quick to warm back up. Here's a look at your Saturday forecast. Great for any outdoor plans, last minute Christmas shopping, whatever you're doing with friends and family to prepare for the holiday that is creeping up faster than you can believe. Now we go into Sunday, where another frontal boundary is going to try to move through, but rain chances are not very impressive with this because we are going to just have had that cooler and drier air ushered in from the first frontal boundary that drives through really early in the morning on Friday. So there's not a lot of moisture to work with. That's why we don't have much in the way of rain chances. I've even elected to keep rain chances off of Sunday, including Monday and Tuesday as we go into next week, because these little green or little blue specks are not very definitive whatsoever. We'll get a much better idea once this pops up on our high resolution model short range future view over the coming days. But we continue into Monday. There may be a few spotty showers around. However, it's not going to be anything that ruins any outdoor plans. This is just going to be a stray shower or two, if anything is to fall throughout Sunday into Monday into Tuesday. And we are going to have a story of probably some partly cloudy skies to maybe even some mostly sunny skies as we go into the midweek next week. Then we go all the way to Christmas Eve on Wednesday, and it's looking like Christmas Eve forecast, plenty of sunshine, and I do imagine some above average numbers will be in store as we head into the midweek next week. So here's a look at your afternoon highs. They'll do a bit of bouncing around. It's a really true roller coaster ride on your 7-day forecast that you'll see in just a moment. Steady warm up, maybe a little bit warmer for today, remember, and then we see a little bit of a drop off, but definitely not as steep of a drop on the roller coaster as we saw between Sunday and into Monday. So it's not going to be that frigid cold Arctic air. It's just going to be a slightly cooler air mass behind this cold front, and then we will begin the quick warm up back above average by the time we roll into the end of the weekend. Your morning low temperatures do a very similar thing. 30 degrees this morning, up to 44 tomorrow, 43 on Friday, and then we bump down back into the upper 20s, right there around 30 degrees, and just below freezing temperature. So you're probably going to feel the influence of these cold fronts that pass through over the course of the next week, more so in the mornings as opposed to what you will feel in the afternoons. 29 goes up to 35 as we roll into the end of the weekend, and it does look like we are going to see another bit of a cool down as we go into the beginning of next week, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a substantially cooler air mass. We'll just do some bouncing around in between the 60s, and like I said, I elected to keep the rain chances off this portion of your 7-day forecast because it's not very definitive, hasn't been for the last 2 days. So obviously right now, I'm just going to wait and see if the longer or the short range models, do pop up maybe a few spotty shower chances. But right now it's looking like it's going to be of the light shower variety, maybe even just a sprinkle as we go into the end of the weekend, the beginning of next week. But we should have a good stretch of some above average temperatures after maybe a slight cool down into next Tuesday. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But let's talk about the first 5 days of your 7-day forecast, where we do see above average temperatures both today and tomorrow. Really good rain chance. Like I said, a good likelihood that almost everyone is going to receive something in the way of rain, whether that's just a light shower, whether that's just a couple of sprinkles, or that is even a pocket of some steadier and some heavier rain. Almost everyone is going to be engulfed within some form of rain throughout your Thursday afternoon, lingering a bit into the evening, and rain chances will linger farther to the east as opposed to farther to the west. So if you live in Taylor County, Macon County, Crawford County, those rain chances will get out of the picture probably before dinner time, but we are going to hold on to them till say around 8 to 9 p.m. throughout Thursday evening, the farther east you live. So Johnson County, Truitland County, Washington County, and Wilkinson, Lawrence, all those areas a little bit farther over to the east. Then we have that early morning rain chance on Friday. After we get through the early morning hours, right there around morning commute time, I will flip that icon into what you see on Saturday. It will be a completely sunny day for the rest of Friday, but I'll probably throw a breezy label on it because that breeze is going to linger into the day as we go throughout Friday. And remember, 43 degrees, yes, it looks like we're starting out Thursday morning very similar to Friday, but paired up with the winds, I do imagine those numbers are going to feel a bit chillier. Then we see that steady increase throughout the weekend, day by day. 29 degrees forecasted to be now the lowest temperature that you do see on your 7-day forecast, but pretty similar to how it did feel as of this morning, maybe even just a tad bit chillier. Make sure that you're bundling up if you're heading out the door early on Saturday. Then 60 degrees for a high. Morning low temperatures in the mid-30s on Sunday morning for the first day of winter. So the morning on Sunday is at least going to feel like the start of winter, but the afternoon, not so much. 66 degrees for a high temperature, and that's gotten a bit of a bump down right now, or as of Monday, excuse me. It was looking like Sunday may even flirt with the 70-degree mark. Don't you worry, if you're searching for the 70s, we very well could have that in store as we go into Christmas Day, which, speaking of which, 8 days away from the big holiday, and of course a week out from today is going to be Christmas Eve. So only a little bit of time left to make sure that you're on the nice list for Santa Claus's arrival on Christmas Eve night. Average high for Christmas Day all time since we started taking records way back in the late 1800s is going to be 60 degrees, and your average low temperature somewhere in the upper 30s, around 37 degrees. Well, the general trend that I'm seeing right now is going to be some above average temperatures. I have a high confidence in that because of this. Take a look at your temperature outlook for the range of December 22nd all the way through the 26th. So the 26th, the day after Christmas, that's going to be next Friday, which is the end of that range. And I believe the 22nd is going to be on Monday. So the course of Monday through Friday next week, not only do we have a probability of seeing some above normal temperatures, but take a look at how far over to the right we are. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, getting into the territory of 5 boxes over to the right on the edge of the scale. The higher over to the right or the higher over to the left that you go, that means the greater probability of seeing those above average numbers. And not only that, areas farther to the west of us, they have an even greater probability of seeing above average numbers, which gives you the confidence that not only are we going to be above average, but I believe we're going to be a good deal above average. As of right now, the models that we look at on a day-to-day basis when we come into work, we make these forecasts, they're hinting at a near 70-degree Christmas. And the morning low temperature is starting out somewhere in the mid to the upper 40s. It is looking like it is going to be an above normal Christmas in terms of those averages I just told you about, the specific numbers, and the rain chances, of course. We are still having to do a bit of fine tuning. Right now, it's not looking like Christmas is going to be a washout by any means. It's not looking like maybe it's going to be 70 degrees on the dot. However, I do have high confidence in seeing some above average numbers. My general thinking is still in the upper end of the 60s for those high temperatures throughout the day on Christmas afternoon. So great weather for going outside and playing with some of those new toys or playing with some of the gifts that Santa Claus brought you or one of your family members brought you. It is going to be great weather for that. However, in terms of if you're wanting a white Christmas or if you're wanting to actually feel some of that chill for the Christmas holiday, don't get your hopes up. I made a vertical video earlier this morning and I asked if you were dreaming of a white Christmas. Well, it's best to keep dreaming. Obviously, that rarely ever happens in Central Georgia, and I have 100% confidence that it is not going to happen this year. So a bit of bad news for all of you searching for a little bit of that winter weather. However, like I said, this is still going to be a comfortable afternoon, whether we're in the upper 60s, whether we're right there around 70 degrees, a little bit warm for your liking for Christmas Day. However, still a very pleasant environment, I promise you. So that's where things stand as of right now. We'll continue to provide you with updates as we get closer and closer to Christmas Day. But as of right now, that is the general thinking. And we have a very dreary day tomorrow to get through before we have to start turning our focus into the Christmas holiday. Make sure that you grab the rain gear before heading out the door tomorrow, because yes, you may dodge the rain in the morning hours. However, just because you dodge it in the morning doesn't mean that you won't run into it in the afternoon. And I have a pretty good idea that you are probably going to run into some form of rain as you wrap up the work day, wrap up the school day. So you'll want to be prepared as you go throughout the second half of your Thursday. Then we'll get those rain chances out of the picture just in time for any weekend plans. So that's going to do it for your extended forecast this Wednesday. Once again, we'll be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow with another update.